the government has been hurtling from one scam to the next. The common thread in unraveling each of these scams is our guest at the India Today Conclave 2013. He is responsible for turning a staid accountant job into the most formidable and feared corruption-busting force in India. There was a time when shoddily written, badly edited, and poorly printed CAG reports were dismissed without a second glance. But now, the explosive, slickly designed, and glossily printed CAG reports are read page to page, much like a Jeffrey Archer thriller. CAG reports make headlines, set the national agenda, force ministers to step down from their jobs, and in some cases, even succeed in sending the culprits to jail. In the eyes of the people of India, the CAG is a modern-day hero. But in the eyes of the government, he's a politically motivated adversary who's stepping beyond his Lakshman Rekha so that he can help the government's opponents and set the grounds for his own political future. So who is the real CAG? A fearless anti-corruption crusader or a sensationalist constantly in search of his 15 minutes of fame? Ladies and gentlemen, let me invite to the India Today Conclave, India's super auditor, the Comptroller and Auditor General, Mr. Vinod Rai. Let's hear it for him, please. At the India Today Conclave, Mr. Vinod Rai will speak on the topic, democracy without accountability is like a body without a soul. I present to you Mr. Vinod Rai.
Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you very much, India Today, for inviting me for this gorgeous conclave. My only grouse is the BYT and the PYTs have spoken today morning and they speak tomorrow morning. And there is this horrible auditor to ask to speak immediately after lunch on a Friday afternoon. Not fair at all. Not fair at all. But that's it. It's not very often that an auditor gets a captive audience. And as long as I've got one, I might as well encash upon it, capitalize upon it. I've been asked to speak on a subject which is accountability institutions and their role in democracy. Now, we the people of India have given to ourselves a parliamentary democracy. A democracy, of course, of which we are all very proud. And a democracy which has consistently, excepting for the last couple of years, given us double-digit, near double-digit growth, inclusive growth too. A truly vibrant democracy where each pillar of the democracy has delivered its role in a very scintillating fashion. And we in this country are very conscious of the right to freedom, liberty, equality, etc. that is not available to lots of citizens across the world, and we are very proud of that also. The three pillars, which is the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive, have done tremendous, commendable work. The fourth estate, 24/7, has done equally commendable work, often on overdrive. But then they represent the people in a large number of ways, and their role in the entire fallout of various events has been remarkable. But every institution, even if it's expected to deliver efficiently, must have an element of vigilance put into it. Especially in a participative democracy like ours, where power ultimately vests with the people, there needs to be an element of vigilance, and that's where the accountability institutions come in. That's where institutions like, there is a parliament, there is a judiciary, there is an exec, but in addition to that, the institutions of horizontal accountability like Vigilance Commission, the Information Commission, and then the poor auditor also falls in that category. Then there are horizontal, the vertical institutions beyond the horizontal, which is of course the press, the NGOs, and lots of other citizens who today have come center stage. And it's a wonderful situation because what I've been saying all along, that these are the people who constitute the silent majority. And this silent majority today wants to be heard. And all kudos to the media, which is ensuring that the voice of that silent majority, which till today was not heard by anyone, is really reaching those places where it is meant to be heard and where it can make a credible difference. Now, go down to the days of Kautilya, you go down to the days of the Athenian state, you go down to any other place in history, and you find that these accountability institutions were put in place. Kautilya has mentioned is Arthashastra, that just the way a fish which is swimming in the water, you don't know when it is drinking that water. Those who deal with public monies need to be put on focus, on notice, made to be sit in glass houses where each of their actions is seen by the public at large, activities are made transparent, and they are held accountable by institutions which democracy has put. Now, modern day democracies where those whom we elect to power, those who represent us, those who exercise power on behalf of us, must be obligated to ensure that all the actions that they take gives assurance to the public on the street that those actions are for the benefit of the man on the street. Because that is the obligation that they need to do. And by virtue of having been elected and given that power to act on behalf of the normal person, they must be accountable to the man on the street. Now, most modern day constitutions are also based on the principles of separation of powers. These are being done as it is, but at the same time, accountability institutions are the core institutions of a successful performing democracy, because these are the only institutions who provide a restraint on the abuse of power and ensure that there is no arbitrary behavior of the executive. These are the institutions who are an independent mechanism to ensure that things move in the manner they are expected to move, and that public trust is created in these institutions or the government that they represent, so that the public feels that the monies which were collected from them, and believe me, these monies are collected compulsorily, there is no element of any kind of discretion in collection of taxes. Taxes have to be paid. But I must know, the public must know how the monies which have been collected as taxes have been spent. Have they actually been spent for the public good? Now, just the fact that today we are at a critical juncture, the ability of the system to deliver account or enforce accountability cannot be challenged and should not be challenged. But bottlenecks which impinge upon accountability and have been created in accountability need to be removed. Accountability cannot be regulated or relegated to a secondary position in pursuit of power and money. Typically, people with vested interests in the system attempt to subvert the rules of government accountability on the one hand and free market competition on the other hand. Several transformational developments taking place in the country present opportunities for this section of players to try to divert decision making in government and public institutions for their personal agenda. These people then become the most insidious threats to a healthy democracy, and it is therefore crucial that the accountability institutions must reposition themselves to the changing scenario and must assist to serve interests of the public. And it is one of these institutions that I represent today, wherein we sincerely believe that our job is not merely to audit the expenditure of government or government institutions. Our mandate today is far more than what was and far different what it was 65 years back. The entire job of the public auditor today is to ensure that the executive, that the government is held financially accountable to the legislature. And the ultimate power rests with the people. They have elected the legislature. Now, in doing so, it's not enough for us to conduct audits, prepare reports, and plug them to Parliament. We feel that we owe it to society, to civil society, to people who are interested, that where expenditure has been made on developmental institutions, developmental schemes, or health schemes, education schemes, rural employment, or whatever it is on, we need to sensitize public opinion on government spending. And as Rahul mentioned, that our reports neither have content nor are they packaged well, you said in the beginning. Okay, previously. He corrected himself. Media never does that. He says previously they were neither had content nor packaging. Now at least they have packaging. He's doubtful about the content. He says it's like Jeffrey Archer, and everybody believes that it's more fiction that we write, and it's not content. So, but we thought we must sensitize public opinion, and in doing so, wherever we do audits in health and education kind of sectors, we need to prepare documents which are easily readable, small, concise, and bring out the true picture. And that's why we brought out concise booklets which we call Noddy books. Enid Blyton's Noddy, the books were roughly of this size, same shape, didn't have more pages than what this one has. This has 18 pages. This is on the Rural Employment Guarantee Program. Anybody who reads this booklet would have sufficient knowledge of what our findings are, because it gives you the trend of the finding. And if anybody wants to read the entire detailed report, we have the CD inside it in the end. The entire idea is social sector, where we need to sensitize public opinion, because most of the parliamentarians, believe me, after I've signed a report, I don't read it again. It's not very inviting. But this is enough to, this one is on rural employment guarantee, this is on the rural health mission. The idea is, and we give them out free just to ensure that the NGOs, the media, schools and colleges, the citizen at large, citizens groups, etc., are properly sensitized about huge programs in which the spending is nothing less than 45 to 50,000 crores every year. Now, worldwide, governments have been repositioning audit institutions. I must give you the classic example of the Auditor General of the United States. The 110th Congress in 2004 passed a resolution which, inter alia, said, just as the Auditor General in India is called the CAG, in the US, the institution was GAO, General Accounting Office. But in 2004, they repositioned it. They continued with the same acronym, GAO, but they have started calling Government Accountability Organization. That makes a sea change in the entire focus of what the institution should be doing. And in the words of the Auditor General of the United States itself, he says, worldwide, there is nothing that the United States government does or spends on which is not available for us to not only audit, but to see whether the optimality or suboptimality of that policy initiative have been worthwhile or not. And that is why in India, we have repositioned ourselves. We do not anymore do the conventional financial or compliance audits. We do what is known as performance audit, where the objective of the outcomes of spending, the efficiency of spending, the efficacy of the spending, and the economy of that expenditure is looked into us. But obviously, when you get into newer domains, when the old order changes, the new order comes into position, there's a great deal of inertia that you're running up against. So obviously, there will be some murmuring against what one is doing, and that's how situation today has unfolded itself. Now, in the opening sentence, I was asked not to do too much of talking. It is enough if you stand at the lectern and take questions. So I'd like to conclude by saying just one paragraph, which I thought we should, as citizens who have become sensitive to executives, to legislature, or to anything that's happening, even the judiciary, I think we have a role to play. That role is a very significant role. And as I stand before you, I'd like to remind you that we are poised at that juncture in Indian history, where the pledge of the framers of our constitution places a huge challenge on us. The challenge is that we were entrusted with leisure, the blessing of democracy, which brought within it an opportunity to practice and succeed in self-governance. Today, we need to remind ourselves that democracy is an experiment in government which succeeds or fails on its own merit. On the merit of the people who need to actively engage in nation building, on the merit of those in whom we place that fiduciary trust to control public monies and thereby our own welfare itself, and on the merit of the institutions that we create to ensure that indeed all actions and programs of government are architectured for the good of the people. I stand before you to remind you that there is really no Bharat or India. And there's been so much of talk about it. We are one homogeneous whole. And we, the people, along with our geographical boundaries, constitute the nation. And we, the people, have given ourselves a government or a state. This responsibility enjoins upon us to ensure that the state works for our benefit and that the nation can never be subjugated to the state, and that our institutions are strengthened to ensure that those in whom we place the trust to administer on our behalf indeed do so, placing our welfare as paramount. And I stand before you to remind you that ultimately it is we the people whom posterity will hold accountable if today we do not ensure that we bequeath to Gen Next an India richer in all respects than what we had inherited. Thank you.
You know, it's very interesting how Mr. Vinod Rai is trying to make CAG reports more readable, easy to understand, easy to access. It's very different from the way this institution has been for the last several decades, and I'm sure we've got several questions that our guests would like to ask. I'd like to introduce the expert panel for this session. We've got C.S. Vaidyanathan, former Additional Solicitor General. We've got Yamini Iyer, Head of Accountability at the Initiative, Head of Accountability Initiative at CPR, and Deepak Kapoor from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Vinod Rai, there's been a lot of talk over the past several months about the government being very unhappy with you. From the Prime Minister, the President, the INB Minister, they've all spoken about how you're crossing the veritable Lakshman Rekha. What is it that you want to tell those who think that you've gone beyond your mandate, which was to audit accounts, created a monster, a monolith which it was never meant to be, where you now comment on policy matters which the government believes was never the CAG's mandate, sir?
Really, I, nobody in government has been able to point out to us where we have questioned policy. We have looked at policy in, well, three of my reports that I can immediately think of. First page says, somewhere we have said, policy formulation is the sole prerogative of government. Audit cannot get into that paradigm. Audit's job is to audit the implementation of that policy. And that's exactly what we have been doing in each of the audits that we have done. Now, I've said it earlier, unfortunately, external auditor comes post the event. Yes, we are wiser by hindsight, but that's our role worldwide in 191 countries. External auditors of my kind do a job which is a post-mortem. We unfortunately cannot be seen, as I've said earlier, to be cheerleaders for the government. And it is a kind of an adversarial position, but we make recommendations. We try to suggest mid-course corrections. We give early warnings. And if those are accepted, society benefits. If they are stonewalled, society loses.
You know, a senior minister in the government, when he was speaking to me, said, "You are the chief nitpicker of government policy." And because of all these CAG reports, there's so much paranoia and fear in bureaucracy that no one is prepared to put pen on paper because they're scared of Vinod Rai coming after them. They say, "We'd rather sit, squat on files, not move these files, let no decisions be taken, let the economy grind to a halt, but we will not be hounded," because in hindsight, it's always easy to find fault. They call you the chief nitpicker.
Well, by profession, we are fault finders to the nation. There's no doubt about it. We are fault finders. We are expected to. The only thing is, where we see good practices, we bring them out. We try to disseminate them. Well, as regards the fact that somebody fears that we will come chasing them, I must say those are alibis for non-performance. So, it's a total bogey. It's a red herring. Those who cannot inherit. Well, even you are not allowing me to give me.
No, I think it's working. Just give it another shot.
Those who inherently are incapable of taking decisions stand behind this excuse that's about to.
You know, during one of the interviews I did with Digvijay Singh, he made a comment, and I'd like to put that to you. If the judiciary will do the executive's work, the CAG will formulate policies, and civil society will formulate laws, then how will democracy function? What does the CAG want to become, if not an accountant? Does he intend to become the next Prime Minister?
I don't want to comment upon it. He's a very, Vijay Singh is a very respected senior member of the Indian polity. But I've made this remark earlier, where have we questioned policy? Nobody has pointed that out to us. We have seen policy formulation and we've said, okay, this policy was formulated, but in the implementation things have gone wrong. And that's just what we've done. We have nowhere questioned policy formulation. We sincerely believe that policy formulation is indeed the sole prerogative of the political executive, no one else.
But there's this big conspiracy theory all across Delhi that once you retire, in a few months from now, you actually wish to join politics. Is that correct, sir?
Look, Rahul, if I deny it, you won't believe me. If I accept it, well, then I'm going down the road. I best leave it to time to decide what actually I do.
I would believe you if you would deny it, but you're not denying it.
Pardon me?
I would believe it if you were denied, but you're not denying it, and that lack of denial also seems to indicate something.
Will you get the sole affirmation of all those collected here? Well, at present, and indeed in my entire career, I've been totally apolitical. I hope to continue in the same fashion.
You will not join a political party in the future.
I've made my statement.
Okay. Let's take the questions from our expert panel. I want to begin by getting CS Vaidyanathan to ask the first question.
Roy, you had mentioned that you have never questioned the policy of the government. I want to take two of your reports. One is about coal, the other is about 2G. If the policy of the government is to have cheap power, and if coal has therefore to be sold at a fairly economical rate for the power generating stations to be viable. Now, your premise in the report is that the government must raise the highest amount when it is disposing of the resources. Therefore, by auction, it must have fetched X amount. Therefore, there is a presumptive loss. Equally, in regard to 2G, you quantified a presumptive loss. Now, the government can very well say that by disposing of coal, and that too to units which have a commitment to supply to the distributors at a fairly reasonable price, maybe 2 rupees 50 paise per unit. Now, they can't do it if coal is to be auctioned. And therefore, are you not in a sense saying that the government's policy should be to raise the highest resources and not to sell electricity at a cheaper rate?
I need to stand up and answer this. I'd love to have taken off my jacket and answered it. But since I can't do that in public, Mr. Vaidyanathan, yes, that question has been put to us. Let me take them one by one. In terms of the coal report, we have nowhere said coal should be auctioned. Nowhere in our report. Please go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We have not even remotely recommended that it should be auctioned. All that we've done is 2004, in the month of April, the then Secretary Coal said that coal mine blocks are being allocated on a screening committee procedure. Up till now, from 93, it was all right. There were no demand for these coal blocks. Prices globally for coal have gone through the roof. And he used the expression, now, the allocatees, and he used the word allocatees. Normally we've been saying allottees. The allocatees of these coal mines are making windfall profits. He's used the expression. And hence he's recommended now we need to go in through a more transparent process of auctioning the coal. Within 7 months of his making this proposition, the then coal minister on 1st of November has approved this recommendation and said, yes, I agree with the recommendation, I agree with the rationale, we need to go in for a process of auctioning the mine blocks henceforth, and said, bring forth a cabinet note for it. Of course, from 1st of November 111 till 2010, when the bill was actually introduced in Parliament, all kinds of things happened. All that we've said is, when the decision was taken to allot these mines by auction, why did it take 7 or 9 years to follow that policy which had been enunciated? We have not recommended, we have not. In the case of the 2G, nowhere have we said that maximize revenue. The Planning Commission in the plan document has said that national resources should be utilized such that we generate revenues, not maximize revenues. We generate revenues. That was what the Finance Ministry was saying repeatedly over 1.5 years before Spectrum got finally allotted. We have not said maximize revenue. Planning Commission said revenue generation, and so did the Finance Ministry. Now, if you want to ask me about presumptive losses, auditors, you know it, you've been in this profession, worldwide do enunciate the shortage of revenue, potential losses, and the word presumptive has come not from, is a of our creation. It is word presumptive, which is in the direct tax code. The word presumptive is used by the International Monetary Federation and any number of accountants bodies across the globe.
I'm going to get Yamini Iyer to ask the next question.
I'm going to shift gear a little bit. A lot has been spoken about your reports on coal, on T2G, but I think the most critical role that you play is in tracking how money flows all the way down for people's direct and basic entitlements. You talked about the naughty books, and that was an extremely important step forward in taking sort of, how explaining to ordinary people how government money flows down. But we still have a fundamental problem, which is that large numbers of these social sector schemes don't actually fall in your ambit. So how are we going to deal with that problem? Because ultimately, if we're talking about accountability for that last rupee spent for the school, for people's pensions, for the PDS system, for healthcare is critical. And yet, systemically, we seem to have a significant problem. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts as CAG are on how we deal with this problem.
Yeah, but 4 years back, you see, we conduct audit through an audit act which was passed by Parliament in 1971. There was no such thing as a PPP then. 73rd, 74th amendments had not come. Least of all was the model that we now follow, where the NGOs, the special societies have been created for this implementation of these social sector schemes. So, over the years, this model of devolution of government funds did not fall within our automatic legal mandate. About 5 years back, I made a presentation to the Planning Commission and indicated to them that 53% of the central sector schemes, humongous amount then, it was about 63,000 crores, did not fall within our automatic legal mandate. And subsequently, we have submitted an amendment, a proposed amendment to the government. We did that in November of 2008 to amend the Audit Act and ensure that these fall within the automatic legal mandate of the CAG. But the government has been proactive, pending that legislation being passed by Parliament. Henceforth, they always tell the agency receiving the public funds that they will receive the funds only on the condition that they will permit audit by the CAG's establishment.
Mr. Deepak Kaur.
Thank you, Rahul. Mr. Rai, it was great listening to you as always. I think the CAG reports in the last couple of years have actually reached the man on the street very well. Somehow the impression which the man on the street gets is that there is no accountability in any department or any institution of the government, or no accountability framework. So if I were to ask you, if you were to choose any one function or any institution in India which has an acceptable or satisfactory accountability framework, which one is it? And if there is one such acceptable or satisfactory one, shouldn't one replicate that all over?
Deepak, I thought we were in the same profession. You shouldn't be asking me such uncomfortable questions. Well, it's very difficult. It's really very difficult to rate institutions that we've gone through. At one point of time, we actually went through the process of trying to figure out whether, like lots of other auditors general do in other countries, rate institutions according to their performance. Rate state governments according to their performance. But then we realized we were getting into territory which could create problems for us. All kinds of comments, maybe criticism would emerge. So there are a large number of institutions which are very well architectured. I mean, look at the Rural Employment Guarantee Program itself. By design, the architecture of the program is excellent, absolutely excellent. It's been designed very well. Maybe some points of time in implementation of the program, in the way the delivery schedules are prepared, or in the implementing agencies, there are some inadequacies. and that's what we come into. But yes, uh, possibly we need to look into these institutions also, which, as you say, are institutions of best practices. And what I should have mentioned, in these naughty books, which we were not doing earlier, and Rahul called us fault finders to the nation, if we come across a good practice, earlier we were saying, yes, that's a job, they've done it well. But now if we come across a good practice, we put it up front so that it gets disseminated across states, because we are the only guys who see them pan-India, pan-institutions, pan-states. So we put them up in our reports up front itself and say, this is a good practice, you might consider disseminating it.
Sir, I have a concern. You've built up now a formidable reputation for the institution of the CAG. How confident are you that going forward also, the CAG will continue in the same vein? Because no matter which government, they will try their best to ensure that the next person who comes to do the job that you do will not be half as uncomfortable as you. Mr. Seshan created the CEC in his own image, and in a way, the CEC then reached a certain level and went on to consolidate and grow further. Do you think that after you go, they will find the one bureaucrat who will be most pliant and ensure that no other uncomfortable CAG report ever comes out? Do you think the institution has now been strengthened so much that that won't happen?
Well, it's hardly a question which needs to be answered, but since it's been in the public domain, it's best to try and attempt it. Institutions define their own destiny. Really, single individuals do not make that kind of a difference. Let me assure you, I worked for about 40 years plus. I'm really not that old, but anyway, I've worked for 40 years plus. I've worked in the state, I've worked in the center, I've worked in public sector also. But in terms of sheer human resource endowment, in terms of sheer professional skills, the Audit and Accounts Department is second to none. They're absolutely professionally the best that you can get. And the reason why I'm saying that is the profession is recognized so well abroad. The International Atomic Energy Association or Agency, the World Intellectual Property Organization, two United Nations bodies, international bodies, who up till now had never been audited by any institution outside Europe. We are the first country who were nominated to audit them from last year onwards. It's a recognition of the professional expertise of the human resource endowment of this department. They're totally apolitical. The professional skills are upgraded in national and international institutions year to year at every stage, maybe 12 years, maybe 18 years, maybe 26 years. These are the three that I can remember. They are sent to institutions where we think that professionally they will be coached to imbibe globally the best that is available in the world. And hence we've built up expertise which absolutely is remarkable. And believe me, with the strength that the right to information has given us, with the same strength that Information Commission has given us, the institution is not at the mercy of any one single individual. It will continue. That is the writing on the wall. And the earlier all of us get accustomed to the fact that there is an institution which needs to function in a proper way, the better it is for us to realize and function that much more transparent.
Sir, in November 2012, Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office, Mr. Narayan Swamy, said that the CAG should be split into a multi-member body. Instead of having one person who's got all powers vested in him, it should be split into a multi-member body that will create greater transparency. Former CAG, Mr. Shuglu, accepted that suggestion and said, one person is too powerful if he's CAG, make it a multi-member body. What do you think, sir?
See, there's nothing wrong with that suggestion. There are models, different models all around, all over the world. There are multi-member bodies. These are called courts of audit. Court de Com, for example, France, it's called. They sit as a court. Believe me, their powers are fantastic. They can punish defaulters. Good enough. Have a multi-member body. Make them sit as a tribunal or a court. Let them punish defaulters also. There are models which is called commission of audit. Again, they have very far-reaching powers. So in terms of power, it's the poor CAG of India who actually has no power. He just prepares his audit report and plugs it into Parliament. This suggestion of a multi-member body was made by the Venkatachaya Committee, I think in 2002, when it was going into amendments to the Constitution. At that time, the comment from the institution of the CAG was that it should not be made multi-member. But we, in about 2 years back or 3 years back, we have said, yes, make it multi-member if you want, but then multi-member means with the attendant powers and responsibilities, and it can be a very powerful body.
Okay, Mr. Vinod Rai, for sharing with us your thoughts on accountability and transparency and for doing the commendable work that you've done. Thank you so much for joining us at the India Today Conclave 2013.
Thank you very much for being patient.
All we're hoping for is the way you build CAG is the way CAG stays and governments are on their toes forever. Thank you very much, Mr. Vinod Rai. Thank you.